Hello, today I'd like to illustrate an opening strategy for white called the Colle Zukertort. I wrote a book on this called Zukum, the Colle Zukertort Revolutionized. It's an opening strategy where white attempts to limit black's space and black's play. The pawn skeleton is being shown on your screen right now. The most important point is that white will attempt to control the square so that black cannot push this pawn forward. And this pawn can't move at all, and so these pawns here form a type of dividing line in black's camp, and most of his pieces are going to get stuck over here where they have a hard time getting to black's king and can get in each other's way, and they also have a hard time defending the king sideways, and black has a hard time transporting pieces from this side of the board to this side of the board, whereas white ends up having a pretty easy time amassing pieces over here to attack black's king side. The game that we're going to be looking at is a game between Igor Derzhalev and Sergei Podmarzhkov, played a little bit over a year ago in Russia. And Igor does a really good job in this game of illustrating how the Colle Zukertort works and capitalizing on just a few inaccuracies by his opponent to set up a position where black can really just not do anything. So this is the first signal that white's doing something a little bit non-standard. Normally white would like to keep at least the option open of this bishop going out here, but here he's willing to shut it in very quickly. This is very standard in the Colle system and very non-standard in most other openings. So this pawn move does two things. One is it makes a hole for this bishop where he can come and exert pressure along the center. In particular, he's going to be one of three pieces that hold this square, which is a key critical square for white to control. The pawn also stops this pawn from coming forward and harassing this bishop. Turns out this is a very, very powerful bishop, sometimes called the Colle bishop, and this is just a great post for that bishop to be on, and it attacks this pawn right here and can generally cause a lot of trouble for black's king side. There's another type of Colle system where instead of defending the bishop that way, white plays this pawn up. That way, if this pawn comes forward, the bishop can jump back like that. This option is called the Colle Koltanowski, and that's not what we're going to be talking about today. The other version, which we are talking about today, is the Colle Zukertort. So that's the difference between the two Colle systems, is how do you discourage black from coming forward and hitting this bishop. They're very different systems, but they're both called the Colle system. They're just different variations. This is another pawn move that's designed to help this bishop. You see, this knight could come to this square and hit this bishop, and so this pawn takes away that square and can later be used for a queenside assault. But mostly this pawn move is designed to stop the knight from coming here. This is very standard. Black often only has one way of creating counterplay against the Colle, and that is down this C file, and so he puts a rook and a queen together in the hopes of busting through here and causing problems before white can get his kingside attack going. It takes a while for white to get his kingside attack going, but it's also somewhat difficult for black to break through over here. This is a key move in the Colle Zukertort because it opens up the F3 square to allow the queen to come through here, perhaps later on a kingside attack. The knight can come through to F3 if need be, perhaps to G5 or just to defend here, and the pawn can come up to F4 to help support this knight. And the fact that white can make this play, whereas black generally has a hard time establishing a knight on E4, is one of the things that make the Colle Zukertort really tick, is the fact that white's one move advantage is enough to make it possible for him to pretty easily make this knight move, while black has a really hard time doing the same. So black appears to have dealt with some of his space issues by moving another knight over here. So now instead of having one piece over here and all the rest of them in this area, he has two pieces over here instead, and it makes a pretty big difference in terms of how much these get in each other's way. The problem is that these pieces aren't really able to move very well, as we will find soon. This knight can't move here or here. It would be a very bad thing for him to take this knight. White would fork his bishop and his other knight. So the only moves that this knight have are to go backwards. This knight has also no moves other than to retreat. This square is covered 3 times, and these 2 squares are covered by White's queen. So neither of these knights can go forward at all. They can only retreat, and Black's bishops are the same way. This bishop has no squares over here. He can only retreat. This bishop has no squares over here. He can only retreat. So none of Black's minor pieces are in a position to go forward. The thing that's hard to believe, perhaps, is that this is actually pretty good compared to what Black's going to have happen to him. As dismal of a state he is in right now, this is sort of the climax of his mobility. One thing you should pay attention to are these 2 squares. They're sort of transport squares. The knight use it to move over. It's a way that Black can either defend his king side from the side, like this queen gives some support to the side, or to move pieces from one side to the other. So Black would like to keep these squares open to make it easy to move back and forth, but with only one route to move through, it's easy for a bottleneck to occur. It's easy for his position to get gummed up. So you might want to keep that in mind as we play forward a few more moves. This is the worst move Black makes all game. It might not look that terrible. He's trying to alleviate his space problems by exchanging one of his pieces for one of Black's, and figures that Black's knight on e5 is very powerful. The problem is that after White moves a pawn there, this knight doesn't have anywhere to go other than back here. He's just going to once again cause transportation problems for Black's camp, and limit the amount that Black can do with any of his pieces. Note that the last couple moves have taken away further squares from Black. This bishop is now taking away this square and this square from Black. This knight is taking away this square and this square. This queen is starting to look like she doesn't have a lot of squares to move to. She could easily get trapped over here. Black is both trying to get some more space, but also is trying to get an escape route for this queen to get back here. White could have taken here and opened up the game, and he would have come out ahead, but he doesn't need to do that, because even if Black gets a little bit of space, it's not going to really help him untangle himself, given how terrible his position is right now. And now Black moves his queen back to the square that he's vacated for her, but White has ways of attacking the queen and also attacking these pawns at the same time, and eventually White simply puts too much pressure on those pawns and they crumble, and White wins because of it. So this rook is one way of doing that. It attacks this pawn and this queen. The knight move attacks the queen and this pawn. And this bishop ends up attacking this pawn by taking away one of his defenders. And so now there are only 2 pieces defending this pawn. The queen has to move, and so White ends up getting 2 pawns there, and he'll probably end up giving one of them back, but his position is just so dominating it wouldn't even matter. And Black resigned here because his position is hopeless. If you want to learn more about the Colle Zukertort, there are a lot of excerpts and articles on my website, www.zukertort.com.